Aaron Sorkin is one of the brilliant writers in film and TV, and his again, you know, he is. It's almost like modern Shakespeare to me. Like, as an actor, if you don't have the dialogue down cold, you can't rise above it. And here is a group of characters in the West Wing who are all the smartest guys in the room. And what was so amazing about that show is being in the back room of power, seeing how things operate. But these are all the people who are like the top of their class at Harvard, who are know what's going on in the world, who are incredibly knowledgeable, and yet there's a certain level of quick-paced dialogue and banter where people pick up on that. And, if you don't know what they're referring to politically, it's not going to be explained to you. You have to pick that up. So I think it demanded a very smart audience as well. And, what I thought it did is really go underneath the skin of the political system and see what happens in the West Wing. And of course, this is the president we all wish we had. Bartlett was the president with an incredible team of people around him supporting him. I mean, it was like the total fantasy world, but really looked at how government works and how power works and how decisions are made. And it did feel like you were seeing that in action. And that cast was sublime, just sublime, and you every single one of them, was unique and inhabited those characters completely. So going into that, because I wasn't there in the beginning, I was doing more ERs at that time with John, was, wow, I get to play in this, incredible field. And I have to say, Tommy Schlamme, who was Aaron Sorkin's creative partner and producing director, and I feel like I learned a huge amount how to be a producing director from working with Tommy. He's fantastic. But he creates a great working environment, again, for you to do your best job. He empowers you completely, and he wants you to come in and make your own movie. And he encourages you to do that. And that's, these are all the things I try to emulate when I'm doing that job. And I'm really grateful to have had that chance to work with him. But yes, I mean, I loved working on West Wing from the moment I stepped foot, on that set. And that set was incredible. And, the script I got was extraordinary. Again, and that was a point with Aaron, you might not get the whole script immediately, but what you got was impeccable. And the words had to be word perfect. There were actually 2 script supervisors on the set, which I've never experienced before. One to be sure that it was word perfect, and the other that's dealing with, what hand your glass is in. So it was a very unique situation in that way. So as far as blocking, how you staged a scene, that was completely up to you. Like if you wanted to, in fact, there was almost no stage directions. So you could get a 8-page scene with 10 actors in it, and it would say interior Roosevelt room. It wouldn't say anything else. So how you staged it, where you put it, if you started outside of the room, if you brought them in the room, if they went through the whole West Wing, that was all up to you as a director, as long as they said the words perfectly. So that's what was required. And the actors all knew that. It wasn't a shocking principle. They all knew that. And so the creative choices were thrilling because you could do whatever you wanted, And of course you have to decide what's appropriate for the scene. What is the scene about? But that was his reelection, Bartlett's reelection. And it was a great piece of writing. It was election day, and it's the only time in the West Wing where people aren't busy. because they're waiting for the returns to come in. So it's a very unique day. And in the story, Bradley Whitford's character is always very nervous on election day. So the whole team plays a joke on him at the polling place. And it was hilarious, you know. And then it ends with his acceptance speech. And that was right when George W. Bush had gotten elected, and this was like the fantasy government. And you know, there were maybe 600 or 700 people in the Biltmore ballroom, and Martin Sheen is shaking hands with everyone, and it was like, oh my God, you know, he's the president of the United States. Yeah, it was quite an experience.
At the end of season 4,
yes,
Aaron Sorkin and Tommy Shalhoub left,
yes,
and John took over more day to day. So did the show change at all from your perspective?
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. I think it felt like, with Aaron, it felt like Italy. Like the trains don't always run on time. You might not always have a script, but it's delicious, you know, and unexpected, and you could have the best bloody pasta you've ever had. I mean, it was, you know, it was a little more chaotic, but it was extraordinary. I think when John took over, it was a bit more Switzerland. You know, it was much more organized, but it wasn't quite as I don't know, unexpected. But I think what did happen, I think that first season, I think it was the 5th season, I think it was trying to find what it was going to be. And then once the whole election started, I thought it reinvigorated itself. And I thought the show was amazing. It was not the same, but it was really good. So for me, that 5th season was trying to find itself again and figure out what it was. And also, you know, he had won the 2nd term, and now W was in office. So it was a different political time, and you have to look at it differently. And I think it's always healthy to reinvent too.
Why do you need to look at it differently?
Because of the world the real world that we're living in. I think because you have to look at its relevance. You know, are you creating a fantasy world? You know, and is that as powerful? You know, if it's not commenting on what's really going on in the real world. And I think those were some of the questions that were asked. And I think it found its relevancy again. I think going through the election process and what that's like for both candidates was fascinating. And I don't think we've seen that before in that way. And I thought it was amazing what it became. And I thought it was a very good way to go out and finish. And I thought, you know, John kept the team intact. You know, and you know, again, in Aaron's brilliance, you know, there were a lot of things that were done to accommodate the fact that he really wrote everything, and no human can do that continuously for 22 or 24 episodes. So there were times when things would shut down. You know, like on a production level, it was, you know, Tommy was a huge part in keeping that balanced, but there were just times that there wasn't material. And that was accounted for, you know, in the production period because there was no way to avoid it. So I think it changed in a different way.